Hello there. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Marche. I'm the webinar director here at Advice Chaser. We're so glad you're here. Before we introduce our guests and get started, I do need to do a little bit of legal housekeeping. Advice Chaser, the host of this webinar, is not a registered investment advisor. We cannot and do not give financial advice. Today's presentation is for educational purposes only and cannot be considered advice for any person's individual situation. Advice Chaser regularly hosts informative webinars such as this one, featuring a variety of knowledgeable professionals, many of whom are licensed advisors. Any opinions, ideas, jokes, or principles expressed by presenters are their own, and however true, funny, or interesting are not endorsed by Advice Chaser. Please do not act on the information you hear today without consulting a qualified financial professional. Well, we are thrilled to bring you this educational presentation today, a timely topic, and I'm hoping that all our attendees will get a lot out of it. A couple of housekeeping notes: attendees are muted, but we do encourage you to ask questions using the chat box, and the presenter will answer those queries either during or after the presentation today during our question and answer session. If you ask a question in the chat box, go ahead and leave your phone number and email address as well. And if we can't get to your question during today's event, we'll make sure someone reaches out to you to address that afterwards. Again, we want this experience to be as educational as possible, so please don't hesitate to ask for clarification or expansion of the material. Well, I'd love to introduce you to today's guests. Our moderators today are from the Tennessee Valley Group at Morgan Stanley. Born and raised in Farragut, Knoxville, Tennessee, Alex Gilliam earned his bachelor's degree in finance with a collateral in marketing for the University of Tennessee. Alex started at Morgan Stanley in 2017 with the Tennessee Valley Group and is currently a financial advisor with a certified financial planner practitioner designation. Alex has a passion to understand the diverse needs of his firm's clients' lives and to develop the most appropriate investment strategy for their unique situation. Outside of work, Alex enjoys sports and serving in his church. And Alex, why don't you go ahead and say hello so they can see you on camera?
Yeah. Hey guys, thanks for all y'all being here. I'm really looking forward to this webinar with Debbie.
Very good. Our second moderator today is Corey Wilson, who is the Senior Vice President of Wealth Management with the Tennessee Valley Group at Morgan Stanley. A graduate from East Tennessee State University with a Bachelor of Business Administration focusing on finance, Corey also holds designations of Certified Financial Planner Practitioner and Certified Investment Management Analyst. Having worked in the industry since 2002, Corey offers clients a seasoned professional who is competent to assist you in making life-changing financial decisions. When not at work, Corey and his family enjoy spending time in service to his church and the community of Knoxville. And Corey, I'm going to go ahead and I know you had a few words, so why don't you go ahead and come on camera and say hello to our.
Sure. Just simply want to say thank you so much. We are so happy to be a part of this today. Alex and I are two of the members of our wealth management team here at Morgan Stanley, the Tennessee Valley Group. We have clients coast to coast and border to border, but we are all located right here in Knoxville, Tennessee. Really, as part of our value proposition, what we bring to clients is that our advice begins with planning and portfolios and making sure clients accomplish goals and dreams and all of that. But it goes so far beyond that, and covering risk and insurance, estate planning, tax strategies, philanthropy. My point is simply this: we do believe in a holistic approach, which is why when we were presented with the opportunity to moderate this particular event, we were absolutely thrilled. Some things that I think we're pretty sure of. Number one, times have been and probably will continue to be uncertain. Number two, we can't control that uncertainty that exists externally. But number three, we do have some control internally. our own response. So I'm just excited to hear Debbie walk us through some tips and tools on how to approach all of this with the right mental attitude.
All right. Well, I'd love to introduce you to our speaker today. Debbie Elder is the nation's leader in motivating students to be peak performers. Her varied background includes running the disciplinary unit at the Calgary Young Offender Center as a therapeutic foster parent, a homeschooler, college planner, and after-school program director. She currently owns the Shady Oaks Primary School, and she loves to share her incredible knowledge in simple steps that can be implemented immediately. She has experience speaking to students, teachers, corporate America, entrepreneurs, and people who want to be successful at life. And Debbie, that includes me, and I hope all the participants. So we're so excited to have you here. And let's go ahead and get started.
Great. Welcome, everyone. And thank you for joining us today. I'm super excited about this topic because as Corey shared with us, one thing we can count on is change. And we sure have seen a lot of that recently. Before we got started, we were talking even about how the weather has changed over the last couple of years. We're seeing different weather patterns everywhere. But there are some things that we can do. And I think Corey kicked it off really well. We may not be able to control the circumstances around us, but we definitely can control what we think and do and our attitude and our mindfulness. And so I want to share with you some attributes, some techniques and strategies that have become very helpful for myself, ones that I've passed on to my students and to many of the clients that I work with in my coaching practice. So we can go ahead and get started. The two most important words in the English language are I am. And I'm going to give you a minute to let that sink in. Anything that follows I am describes who you are. We got to be very, very careful with negativity because what you put out there, if you know anything about the law of attraction or understand how our universe works, you're going to focus on something and that's what you're going to get back. So we need to be very, very clear on how we are describing our world, ourselves, our moods, our jobs. All of that is really important. You don't want to let circumstances drive your mood or the way you're feeling. And that is not easy. None of this is easy, but I think it is a practice, just like yoga. You just keep practicing at it until you get better. And there's certain techniques that you can use to help you remember that. One of the things I shared with my students this week, we are doing a summer camp and we are learning about Napoleon Hill and his work, Think and Grow Rich. And the students have learned all the different steps that he encourages people to go through to be successful. And we've analyzed those, and now they are turning it into a children's book that will be used to teach other children these principles because we believe them to be so very important. And in that book, he talks about things like autosuggestion, which is what you say to yourself. So when you catch yourself saying something that isn't positive, that may be negative, one of the suggestions that Napoleon Hill suggests is that you at that moment repeat your goal aloud. So we're going to talk a little bit about goal setting in just a few minutes, but I want to start with you understanding the importance and the ability that you have to really set your path in whatever direction you want. Whatever you want, you can have. What I've noticed, and I did some college planning years ago, and what was most startling for me, because I had my own schools and I kind of left my little bubble and stepped out into the public and private schools in the Houston area and found that so many students who were getting ready to go off to college with thousands of their parents' money had very, very little self-awareness. And I think it really takes the opportunity that you have to reflect on what's going on. That's how we learn, right? That's how we determine if what we're doing is actually working. And so we've incorporated here at our elementary school a reflection time at the end of each day where our students are encouraged to either journal or verbally share things that worked for them and things they can improve on. And it's amazing to watch these young students as young as 6 years old really put time into trying to better themselves and not just continually going on that sort of hamster wheel, but taking time to stop. And we give them permission to do that. We encourage them to simply look at their day and how can they improve. And I think that's one way to really help with uncertainty, right? Is to really keep yourself on track, but to know what that track is. And if you want to go to the next slide, Marche, we'll talk about what
Mhm.
is inherent in our brains itself, right at the base of our brain. We have the
I
reticular.
did have a question before we get
Oh,
going on that.
sure.
Someone said, uh, when you talk about what you say to yourself and then also saying your goal, can you give an example of that?
Sure. So if you catch yourself saying, I'm not very good at math, or so for example, with my students, they would replace that with, my goal my goal is to be the best student I can be. So what that does is it shifts what it is you're thinking and therefore what you're feeling, because thoughts are really feelings, right? And you want to make sure that so for example, Marche, if you were trying to listen to country music, you
Mhm.
have to make sure you dial your radio to the country station, right? If you're on a rock and roll station, you're not going to get to hear too much country. And so we have to make sure that we're dialing in to the right frequency of where we want to be. And it's really important to stop that negativity and restate with clarity what it is you're trying to accomplish. Because if you're being negative, you're not going to be on the right station and the right frequency to get to where you want to go. So it's really about living with intention and be very clear on the path you've set for yourself so that you can continue on that path. So the reticular activating system, or your RAS, as you can see in the picture, it's a bundle of nerves right here that really acts as your gatekeeper. I know myself, I have a gatekeeper at the school. I have an assistant who very quickly and very effectively vets all of my calls. And so she determines who gets time with me. I'm sure Corey and Alex have the same as you do, Marche. So it's important because we can have up to 2 million bits of data coming at us at all of our senses, which would make our brain explode. That's too much information, right? So it's really important to determine what you want to focus on. I know for me, I recently purchased a new car. I'm not really a car gal. I just need a vehicle to get to and from work and anywhere else I want to go. So when I bought my car, I noticed all these other cars on the road just like mine. I had never noticed them before. So that's my reticular activating system making decision. How you can really, really capitalize on this is what you focus on grows, right? And what it's going to do for you is it's going to continue to activate your belief system. So you have self-talk, which we'll talk about in a minute, which the RAS is going to bring you proof of what you believe in. So if you're an optimistic, happy person, you're going to continue to find proof of that in your world, right? You're going to find those silver linings. You're going to find in every adversity that little seed of opportunity. And I think that's really something we want to strive towards, especially in these uncertain times. If you are someone who is a little bit more of the Eeyore, if you will, and kind of negative and pessimistic, you're going to continue to find more of that. So you've got to make a choice of what it is you want to focus on and then continue to go down that path. What I love about this is when you decide you want to make a change or do something new, you can see opportunities that you might not have seen before the minute you can get that logged into your brain and allow your subconscious to start helping you by working with you and for you. I'm going to move on to self-talk. Self-talk is just that. Right now you're thinking, gosh, I am so glad I'm on this webinar. These guys are awesome, right? It's those words that you say all the time. And I want to encourage you to make sure that what you're telling yourself, is it true? Sometimes we make up stories that aren't really serving us and aren't necessarily true, and they may be based on incorrect information or the wrong perspective. So you really want to ensure that your self-talk is serving you and that it's healthy. And this is something that I would encourage you over the next couple of weeks to really start to pay attention to if you haven't already, and start to journal. What are you thinking about? And I share with my students all the time, if you don't have specific goals, if you don't know where you're going, if you're not clear on your path, you end up helping others reach their goals, which is fine. But I really want my students to be the leaders of tomorrow and to be equipped and to understand that they have some control over that self-talk and that they have an opportunity to really make sure that it serves them and not the other way around. We're going to move on to growth mindset. And for those of you that aren't familiar with this term, there is a growth mindset and there is a fixed mindset. So a growth mindset looks at problems or obstacles as opportunities, right? This is great things that in these crazy times, I know for us, we were able to keep school going during most of COVID. We had to shut down for 2 months here in Texas because our governor shut us down as the whole state was shut down. But then we were able to open back up, and everybody complained about how bad it was. Well, we decided to take a different approach, and we looked at what can we benefit from having to go through this pandemic. What did we learn? What are some practices that we want to continue to do that we would have never thought to do before this happened? And we found some great little nuggets in there, not a lot, but some, that we were able to sort of shift that mindset and go, you know what, we would have never figured out. For example, we split our carpool line. Before COVID, we had 1 line. During COVID, we had 3. After COVID, we have 2. So the kids are being picked up much quicker. Okay, it's not life-changing, but it made a difference. And it's really important to have that mindset to go back and look over things and find out what really works. With a fixed mindset, you're kind of the opinion that this is who you are. So for example, I might ask a teacher that I'm bringing in to interview, are leaders born, or do they become good leaders? And if someone has a fixed mindset, they're going to tell me they're born like that. In other words, you could never achieve that if you didn't have that when you were first brought into this world, which of course we know isn't true at all. They tend to be, if you have a fixed mindset, you're not very interested necessarily in constructive feedback. You feel you have to be good at everything, which is crazy. We can't all do that. So with a growth mindset, it's very easy to start looking at ways to improve and to really welcome that. We teach speech class here, and the students are taught at a very young age how to critique the other speakers. That's not an easy thing to do when you're in elementary school, to critique your peers, but they've gotten really good at it, and they're very, very gentle in their critiques. And we've had some times where a student has prepared and done a great presentation, and the other student really didn't sort of step up and kind of goes, oh, I thought it was great. And they're like, wait, man, I spent 2 weeks putting this speech together. Give me some ways I can improve. And I think that is the epitome of having a growth mindset, is always looking to better ourselves, always looking to surround ourselves with the best financial advisors, right? With the best specialty people in all of the fields that we're working in, so that we can be the best ourselves. I know what I'm good at. And during the pandemic, I brought in the CDC to my school to tell me how to safely keep my school opened. I know my lane, and it's not infectious disease control, right? So know your lane, and then surround yourself with really smart people. I always want to be the dumbest person in the room, because that's how I learn. I always have members of different masterminds, and a mastermind is simply an opportunity to work with other professionals. I prefer to be in masterminds where I'm the only educator, and then I can beg, borrow, and steal ideas from other professions. And it really helps to allow us to continue to grow and to help each other as we grow. So it takes a little bit of work to have a growth mindset. And I think if you find yourself that you currently, when you do your sort of evaluation, that you have a fixed mindset, just being allowed to learn new things and just change your perspective slightly, and know that you can be anything you want, anything. Experts is 10,000 hours. All you got to do is put the time in, right? So just be willing, and you should always have something that you're trying to get better at, that you're working towards. And I think that really helps us to stay kind of on our toes and to be the best that we can be, so we continue to serve those in our areas.
Hey, Debbie, we had a question that came up. I thought that was really insightful. It said, thinking about a growth mindset makes me think about making mistakes. What is the role of making and accepting your mistakes in a growth mindset?
Oh, I love that question. That is very insightful. And if you're not making mistakes, you're not pushing hard enough. Your goals are way too low, right? You got to make mistakes. That's how we learn. But you got to make the mistake, and then you got to stop and think about it. I had a meeting this morning with my marketing team, and we keep a lot of data, right? You got to go back, you got to see, you got to try different campaigns and find out what's working, what's not working. It's kind of boring, but it's really important stuff. And I think it's the same as we're learning new things. If we're not making mistakes, life's too easy. You know, when a child is learning, it's not a straight line. If it's too easy, they're not going to be interested. If it's too hard, they give up. And I think we are all lifetime learners, and we need to continue to pursue new things and to try new things, and to be willing to make mistakes and just brush it off. It's all right. It's okay. That's how we learn. So what's your story, right? We are all the directors, the editors, the producers of our life, and we get to edit every minute. So we get to decide what our story is. I can't tell you how many people I know who bring up old stories, sad stories, trauma. Let it go. Cut that stuff and let it lay on the ground. Not every scene in a movie makes it into the final cut. Not everything that happens in our life do we need to carry with us everywhere we go, right? So take some time to reflect and then maybe to take some redirection, right? It's really good to look at where you're at, whether it's you're looking at your finances, you're looking at maybe your retirement plans, and really be willing to sort through them and find out, what is my story? Where am I going? And to not be dredging up things that haven't served you in the past. You can cut those and let them just sit on the floor and sweep that stuff up later. And make sure that you have those moments that you're really looking for your why, right? Why are you here? What are you doing? What are you trying to accomplish? And then work that into your story. So I heard both gentlemen, both Alex and Corey, are very involved in their church, in their community, right? So these are two individuals who are making a difference and are very, very clear on their why. And I think that's what makes them so successful. So if there's something that you don't have clarity about, I really would invite you to take some time and figure out, what is your why? Why are you getting out of bed in the morning? I know all of my friends are retired. I'm the only one that's still trudging out there, but I absolutely can't get to work in the morning early enough. I love what I do. And the minute that changes, I'll be happy to retire. But right now, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. I love what I do.
I was wondering if you could speak to that. Obviously, many of our clients are pre-retirement, and then as we transition with them through retirement, it's a big challenge. And we always advise, don't retire from something, retire to something. It goes way beyond, can I afford this? So I was wondering if you would comment on, okay, suddenly a third of my day is sleeping, a third of my day is at work, and a third of my day is other. Now a third of that day is suddenly wide open. Is it just as simple as taking the time and really asking the hard questions, or would you comment on, especially during that transitional life?
Well, one of the reasons, Corey, that I'm not retired is I've been watching my friends and just different people that I know, and I've done a bunch of research. I want to be ready. I don't have a desire. I don't have a lot of hobbies. And I think people need to really think through I love how you said that. What's the next phase? What are you going to? It's not I'm quitting my job. It's what's coming up and what are the opportunities that you have and what are the things that bring you joy that you now have an opportunity. Maybe it's gardening. Maybe it's sitting with the elderly and reading to them. Maybe it's holding babies in a hospital, NATO units, whatever it is that brings you joy, but to get very, very clear on that. And again, to make sure that you're not rushing into retirement without really thinking through your finances, right? Because that would be not a very smart thing to do. But I think there is a lot of time in our days, and you want to make sure that you feel fulfilled with what you choose to go down, and that there's a sense of engagement and curiosity and just fun loving. So it's something that you really are looking forward to. And I think there's a good point is that you're giving back to your community also. You know, when we get to this ripe old age, we have a lot of wisdom to share. And I think it's important that we don't take that with us when we go, that we make a point to determine sort of what is the sense that we have that we can give back to our communities, whether it's through wisdom or helping out at a food bank, whatever. But I think having purpose is really important, and making sure that you know what you're doing and why you're doing it. Your why is super important to me. And I know that a lot of people recently have been talking about that and getting a lot of clarity about where it is they're going and why they're doing it, not just sort of going through the motions and checking the boxes. So
We had another question about this, specifically about finding your why. Are there specific kind of areas of focus that most people are looking at? So maybe they have like a hobby, but also there's other goals they have in their life. Are there specific topics or categories that people can study to see if they can find what's most motivating to them?
yes, Simon Sinek has done a lot of work and he's a great orator, and he's got TED Talks. He's very easy to find on YouTube. I would highly suggest watching anything he's put out. I know too that it's really important for people to really take that time to journal, to really figure out what it is you want. We're going to talk at the next slide. This kind of leads right into it if we want to move on. So it says here to start with a wish list. So what a wish list is, if you can imagine that Aladdin has just walked in and he's rubbed the lamp and out comes the genie, and the genie says, you today don't get 3 wishes, you get 101. The difference is you must write them down. Now, this can be a dubious task for someone who has never done it. I can sit up by my pool now and knock one out in 30 minutes. So I encourage you to not give up. What happens is the first 30 to 35 will be very commercially driven. It'll be products or things that you want. And then from 35 to 101, you got to really think. This is a great thing to do, Corey, before you retire, is what is it that you want? And what happens in those 101 is categories start to emerge, right? I love to travel. That's something that I intend to do when I retire, and I know exactly where I want to go. I have my bucket list items all set out. And I think that's really important to figure out, what are those categories? What are those areas that you are interested in pursuing? And then that leads you to how to set your goals, because now you have an idea of what you want. And the best thing about doing a wish list, and the reason I continue to do them is because it works every time, is within 2 weeks, 10 items on your wish list will come true. They will manifest for you. They will be there. So you really want to take the time to write a wish list before you get into setting goals. When you set your goals, you want to make sure that they're SMART goals, which is an acronym, so that they're specific, measurable, action-orientated, relevant, realistic, and time-specific. That allows you to chart your progress and to determine if you're actually moving in the direction that you want to go in. So getting that clarity is really, really important, and setting goals will help you to manage your time and to make sure that you're staying in the correct quadrant of doing what's important, but not emergency, right? We look back at what Stephen Covey has taught us over the years. So it's important to get very focused and clear on where you're trying to get. And we spend a lot of time working with our students on this, because I believe so strongly in setting goals in order for you to achieve all the heights that you want to achieve. It's not going to just happen if you aren't clear about intention. So just something to think about. And these can be financial goals. They can be goals for all different types and areas of your life, but it's important to have them set. And as we spoke earlier, talking about that negative self-talk that slides in, repeating a goal when that happens, it's like you readjust your sail. If you're, sailing on the ocean and you get a little bit side, it's okay. You can just readjust. If we're flying up from Dallas down to Houston and we get blown off track, we have a destination. We can correct. We can come back and make sure we get to Houston. But if you don't have a destination, if you're just getting up every day, kind of living life as it happens to you like a leaf in the wind, it's very difficult to accomplish those things that are really important to you. And I really encourage you to take the time. You're worth it, to make sure that you're using the time you have here to impact to the best of your ability.
Debbie, I don't want to get too far ahead before I grab a couple questions here. You mentioned the law of attraction. Could you repeat what is that, and maybe throw in an example of that as well?
Sure. So it's a law, just like gravity is a law. What you focus on, you bring about. So if you can conceive it and believe it, you can achieve it, right? And if somebody else is doing it, that's just proof that you also can do it. So it's about getting really clear about what you want. So there's something that you can do that it's another tool that I use. In fact, I do one probably every couple of months, and it's called a 5 by 55. So what you do with this, Corey, is you're going to write down 55 times something that you want, right? Something that you're interested in accomplishing. And you're going to repeat that process for 5 consecutive days. If you miss a day, you got to start over. Every time I've done this process, and it takes some time, maybe 30 minutes, but I think I'm worth it. I think my goals and aspirations are worth it. That material, whatever I'm looking for, will materialize. So the one that I'm working on right now simply states, and you want to keep it concise and short, that I have the staffing I need to accommodate the students I want, right? So I've written down a specific number of students that I want this year in my school that are enrolled, and I want to make sure I have the staffing to cover that. So by repeating that and getting very, very clear, that reticular activative system kicks in, right? So now I'm starting to see places and opportunities and ways that I can gather those students that I want, and not just any student. I want to make sure I'm getting the students that are my ideal avatar, that really fit with who we're trying to work with here on our campus. So those are some techniques that you can try.
I think
Great.
Alex had a question as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
real quick, Debbie. Pivoting back to kind of negative thoughts, how do you kind of interrupt anxious or negative thoughts that we all have day to day?
Well, first of all, you have to be aware that you're having them, right? And be able to. So one of the things that I've used in the past is when I have a negative thought, I kind of look up and go, cancel. That's not what I meant. and to just, it's being aware of it, right? And then refocusing it. And with that awareness, Alex, you're going to see that they're going to definitely decrease, right? So it's wanting to make the difference. So I might want to, as I'm lying on the couch eating potato chips, have a much leaner body and work out more. But if I don't take the action to do that, nothing's going to change, right? So when we're looking at setting smart goals, it's really important that they're specific, right? If you just say, I want to lose weight, it's not, you have to be very specific. You have to be measurable. So I'm going to be able to step on the scale in the morning and go, well, there we are. You sure do need to lose a little bit of weight, right? And you need to take some action. You can't be eating potato chips on the couch. You probably need to get yourself to the gym or find a walking partner. And then it has to be realistic and relevant. I can't decide I'm going to lose 10 pounds by the weekend. It's not going to happen. At least not healthy. And then there needs to be a time specific. And you don't need to beat yourself up over it. Let's say you decide to lose 10 pounds by your next high school reunion and you lose 9.5. Okay, you came a little short, but you don't beat yourself up over that. You celebrate your successes. I'm always amazed by my students who take home, for example, a spelling test, and maybe they got 18 right out of 20. And what do most parents in America do? They want to teach them the 2 words they got wrong. What are we doing? Let's celebrate the successes that we have and really get clear on what those are. When you're looking at grit, it's talking about resilience, right? What kind of resilience do you have to stick with your goals, to make a decision that you're going to curtail those negative thoughts that come in, right? And it's about making a promise to yourself. And sometimes I love what Jim Clear talks about. He says when he sets goals that he looks out 6 months in advance and he's like, okay, what would happen to derail this goal? Let's assume it's 6 months down the road and I didn't do it. I didn't stay on track. What are all the pitfalls and obstacles that could have delayed it or took me off track? And then I'm going to overcome those. And I know for myself, I get up very early in the morning, and when I go to bed at night, I think it's a fantastic idea to get up at 4 a.m, hit that gym, get ready, have time to journal, and all the great things I do before I come to work at 7. But I'm going to tell you, the Debbie who's lying in bed in the morning, she thinks that's the most ridiculous idea ever. So I've got to be smarter than her, right? So I get a workout partner. I do whatever I need to do to overcome the Debbie that's lying in bed in the morning and doesn't want anything to do with this plan, right? And that takes grit, that takes resilience, that takes knowing yourself well enough and being willing to state what may be obvious to everyone else to yourself, right? And to make sure that you are going at what you want. So that's why the clarity comes in. Why do I want this, right? What's your why? And that gives you the ability to have grit, to have persistence, to not give up, and to just stick with that until you accomplish what it is you said you wanted to do. And I know people, everything from quitting smoking to losing weight, have found that it's helpful to announce those intentions, right? To let others know what you're thinking so that they can help you. There's a sense of, I know when I quit smoking years ago, I told everybody that I was quitting smoking and the day I was doing it, because I wasn't going to be a liar. I was going to do it. And that helped me sort of stick to my word, is I had to say the words. And so whatever you need to do to keep yourself on track and to be able to understand that, like Corey said so eloquently at the beginning, we can't control what's going on outside of us, but we sure as heck can control what's going on inside of us. And it's a work in progress. And I think we can get really good at that. People use different techniques like meditation, maybe they walk in nature. There's lots of things that you can do to kind of check in, right? To see what's going on with you. And I'm a big believer, as I mentioned, in being parts of mastermind groups, of really relying on others. And in a mastermind group, you work as hard on somebody else's problem or concern as you would work on your own. So you end up having access to much more brain power, and great things come out of those. So change is hard. It's not unbearable, but doing it with others sometimes can make it easier. So maybe you find a partner that you want to work with, maybe your spouse, maybe a friend, maybe an employee that you work with, and together you partner up and you help each other stay on track to overcome some of these obstacles that are showing up for you.
Right. Well, I believe we have some more questions here, so we'll go ahead and open up the floor to those questions. I know Alex and Corey are going to moderate those, so I'll let you guys take that away.
Excuse me. First, I think I'll piggyback off of part of what you were answering for Alex when he posed that question about negativity, but a step further. And to go with this question, we've got a client in Kentucky, lady, and her challenge right now is not even the markets. It's not even economic situations. It's the negativity primarily that she sees from headlines and social media, and really starts her down a spiral that is really tough to control. And so my initial is you just turn it off. Don't look at it. Take it off your phone. Is that too much? You're putting your head in the sand because you do want people to be aware. But as you know, social media can be an echo chamber. It can lead us to the worst parts of ourselves. So I don't know if you would comment on that's a part of everyone's life these days, and how do we do exactly what you're describing with that being out there, or headlines as well, just.
Right. And I can tell you, I have not watched the news in years for that very reason. I rely on my husband to give me any of the highlights that he thinks I need to know, but it's so depressing and so negative. And when I was in my early 40s, I took inventory of who I was spending my time with. And I didn't break up with anybody, but I just shifted my time with who I spent time with. If you weren't sort of upbeat and fun and fulfilling, if I didn't walk away feeling better from having been with you, then maybe I needed to redirect. And so I really, really would encourage your client to preserve her good feelings, her sense of decency, and that things are still good by, staying off those social media platforms and the newspapers and what's going on in the world. I'm also a big believer in, I'm not a worrier. I never have been. Thank goodness, because I don't feel it makes any impact, right? So I like to put effort into something that I feel I can't do anything about traffic, right? But I always have a Audible that I'm listening to in my car. My car is a university on wheels. I'm learning every time. And there's sometimes I get to my house and I'm like, oh, I'm not ready to go in yet. I'm just going to sit in my car and keep listening. I learned so much in those little nuggets of time, and being able to control what I put in helps to control what comes out. And that's super important to me. Good question.
I got one
Alex.
here. Can you talk a little bit, excuse me, can you talk a little bit about positive self-talk when you're in a bad situation? COVID, struggling with inflation currently, a difficult relationship.
Yeah. And I think, again, it comes back to clarity, and we can all talk about what we don't want, right? But when you go through that wish list, Alice, you get very clear on what you want. And that's why they can be very difficult initially. So many people can tell me what they don't want. I don't want to be late. Don't want to be fat. What do you want? Ooh, I don't know what I want. And that's the best place to start. And then those other things you can decide, right? I know I can't control the economy, but I can control my spending. I can be fiscally responsible. I can be aware of where my money is going in the business that I run, and make sure that I'm checking on it regularly so that I can make the best of decisions that I have to make based on pricing and all of that. So it's having the awareness and the willingness to put the time in. And you're going to have that time because you're not going to be focusing on all that negative stuff, right? So we just open up a whole window of opportunity for those of you that are listening that are ready to make some changes. And again, I'm going to say it again, because you're worth it. You deserve it. Living in a negative world and a negative headspace, worrying about things that you can't control, it's back to that hamster on the wheel, right? So you can decide in this moment right now that you're not doing that anymore, and that you're going to move forward. Now, we're human. We're still going to have negative thoughts, but I can tell you my negative thoughts that come are far less than they were even 10 years ago. And so it's a practice, and it's really something that we continue to work on. And there are disappointments, right? I had a big business disappointment this week, but I'm also a big believer that that wasn't meant to be, and something better is coming. And I really believe that. And you can look at things that have happened in your life, and you're like, Garth Brooks has a great song where he talks about a girl he wanted to marry, and turns out, God knew better than he did, right? So I think that it's sometimes those missed opportunities aren't missed at all, right? You have to make room in your life for the great new things that are coming. And sometimes you have to let people go. Maybe you have to clean out your closet so you can have new clothes come in. There's the law of vacuum, right? The universe hates a vacuum. So you've got to make room for that new positive energy to come in by getting rid of stuff so that there's room for that positivity. And I think it's the same, I've talked with some people who are looking to get married, that maybe in their 30s, and they still haven't found a spouse. And I asked them about it, and I said, so do you sleep on one side of your bed? No, I sleep across the whole bed. Have you put aside part of the closet? Have you left room in the garage for their car? They're like, no. I said, well, how is he or she supposed to come? You didn't leave them any room. So, you really have to give them that space, give them that vacuum for that positivity, for whatever it is you want in your life to come into what you're doing, into your existence.
A question that came in that actually ties back to my other one, maybe leaving social media, which, I heard someone say recently, it's like comparing your worst 99% to someone's best 1% all the time. And it just had to do with comparison. And so this question was about how can we stop comparing ourselves to others?
Wow, that's a great question. I think when you get to a level of understanding, when you start to realize how amazing you are, that stops, right? It's a sense of having some real confidence and some understanding that you can't be good at everything, nor do you want to be, right? So I talk to my students a lot about stick in your lane. Like, what are you good at? And enjoy that, and learn from others. If you are so needed to be the best at everything, then you stop trying things because you may not be the best, right? And you get very self-conscious, and you kind of get wrapped up in that competitive cycle instead of supporting others. So if you have a fixed mindset, you aren't really happy when your friend gets that big promotion, right? You've forgotten that if people around you are getting promoted, that means that energy is with you, which means you too can get promoted. So being really helpful and supportive of others can really help shift that, as opposed to comparing ourselves to being competitive. There is a place for competitive. I'm about as competitive as they come. You give me a card game or, anything like that, but not in other parts of my world. I want to be very supportive, and I want to continue to improve upon the areas that I am good at, right? My husband makes fun of me because he says I read the same kind of books all the time. I said, well, maybe I do, but I'm working my business. I'm getting better at that part of what I bring to the table. And I think knowing what those are can really help you. And again, I think being very aware, and it really feels good to congratulate somebody else. It really feels good to recognize another person's achievement and just to recognize them. And I think we forget to do that. We get busy, we get in our heads, and I'm saying get out of your head and live in the moment and be nice, people. Come on.
All right. I just wanted to make sure, Corey or Alex, do we have any more questions that we had queued up?
Yeah, well, there was one I thought was interesting. What if you've taken the time and laid out goals, but you have two of your goals that actually conflict with each other, or seemingly conflict with each other, I suppose?
I would wonder about the clarity. Can you give me an example, Corey?
I can't. This came through the chat.
Okay.
Let me see. Here's an example. So they said, I want to be a very loyal person, but in my work, but I think I need to go to another job eventually. So that's what they were talking about on those two conflicting goals.
That's great. And I think I would ask that person, loyal to whom? I think you need to be loyal to yourself and your family. I had a very similar situation. I put a young man through dental assisting school and found him a job, helped him out, and now he wants to go to a different job. And he called me asking about what I thought about that. And I said, you know what, you got to do what's right for you, and you got to do what's right for your family. And as long as you've done your due diligence and you know what's clear, you have to be loyal to yourself first, right? This whole idea of self-care gets a bad rap. Well, if I don't fill me up at the end of the day, if I don't know what I need to show up the next day and be everything I need to be to my staff, my students, my family, then bad on me. You know, that's shameful. So I think sometimes we're a little hard on ourselves, and I would encourage that listener to give themselves permission to be loyal to their dreams. And there's the right way to leave a business or a position and the wrong way to leave. And I think if that's something you're going to do, I know for me as a business owner and an employer, honesty is the best way. And maybe if they're able to articulate, sometimes people can't, which is difficult. But if this person can articulate why she wants to leave, the employer may not be aware that those problems or those things are missing in that person's work position or work day, and may be able to fix it so she can stay where she's at, or he can, and still feel that sense of loyalty.
Very good. Well, I think that's about all the time we have for questions today. And I want to thank you so much for giving your time to us today. And Alex and Corey, thank you so much for moderating. We want to thank the organizations that have worked with us to bring you this webinar today, and thank you to our attendees. Look for an email soon for a link to the replay of this event, and you're welcome to share that replay with your friends and family. Here at Advice Chaser, we're all about helping you find a financial advisor who's a great fit for your life and your financial questions. Our matching service is free to you, and every one of our advisor partners has committed to offer a free initial consultation to anyone we introduce them to. Find out more by going to advicechaser.com and clicking on the link to find an advisor. Once again, from Advice Chaser, thank you so much for coming, and we will see you at another webinar very soon. Goodbye, everyone.